Real-time Sovryn is go.
Whoa, hey guys. Okay, just coming out of the gazebo here. Such a beautiful place to live. Nice Planet Zero, I tell you. So I got done watching the Apple event, or the iPhone event. Glow time, right? That's what they called it for the iPhone 16 and the other things they announced. The Watch Series 10, Airpods 4, and thought I'd give you my thoughts on it because it's definitely, Google with the Pixel 9 announcement in August and release. We're clearly afraid of what the iPhone 16 was going to bring. Now, just to give you a little preview of what I think, I don't know that they had that much to worry about, but we will talk about that as I go for my little walk through the New Hampshire outdoors here, because, you work from a computer all day, sit in front of a monitor that's not that far from your face and is completely enveloping you because it's this 30-inch monstrosity that curves and whatever nonsense. And you got to get out and you got to walk. So, of course, I have my 5 fingers on. Funny thing, don't want to get lost on a side subject, but funny thing, I remember, because I was there, when libertarians, it wasn't just political or even philosophical. It was lifestyle stuff, man. When I moved to New Hampshire in, oh boy, was that 2010, 2011? No, it was 2011. When I moved, actually it'll almost be, the anniversary's coming up, end of October. When I moved to New Hampshire, which at the time, was for the Free State Project. In fact, I was in the first 1,000. I was number 966. I was hoping it was 666, but it was 966. Oh well. Can't win them all. But when I moved, some of the things, in fact, there's even, I remember Kathy Reisenwitz and some other people, they even made kind of these, joking, mock videos about this, where they made fun of the fact that it seemed like all libertarians were eating the paleo diet and also were wearing 5 fingers and whatever else. Now, I'll be the first to admit that certain libertarians could do with a good amount of ribbing. But I kind of miss, not that I necessarily fall into that fold by most people's metric anymore, but I'm an anarchist, nothing's changed there. But I miss that. I miss the obsession with the philosophical, along with, kind of exploring the philosophical aspects of things, and never got into the political end of things. That's where, honestly, that's where me and a lot of libertarians parted ways, especially around 2016, and we all know why. But anyway, yeah, I really do miss that. So, but I'm not here to talk about wearing 5 fingers, which I never stopped. The paleo diet, yeah, I just stick to that in a more vegetarian way, I think. But that's a whole other story. To talk about what Apple announced today, it's crazy because, so they start off talking about the Series 10 watch, which, by the way, there were quite a few commentators, writers. I don't know if it was Mark Gurman or not. I know he's the big one that does the Power On newsletter. I read that, but they a little windy out again today. Hope you're not hearing that too much. I know in one of the previous videos I think I did about Telegram on YouTube, and of course I made available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, all of it, wherever you want to subscribe. At some points, the wind got really, really bad. And it's like, oh shit. You don't want that in the audio, but what can you do? You can't help it. So anyway, maybe I should go for a boat ride. Maybe in a future video. So anyway, the watch, the Apple Watch. Okay, now don't mind my hand there. I've used the Apple Watch before. I had an Ultra 2, which, by the way, no announcement of an Ultra 3. That was my point that I was going to get to. I think a lot of people are expecting an Ultra 3, or there was predictions of that. There was also predictions of like a really low-end iPhone SE that was actually plastic. None of those came to fruition. Though the plan for a black Ultra 2 did finally come to fruition, which I think is pretty interesting, and who knows what all the logic is behind this stuff. I like the fact that these especially with the Ultra series, these fairly expensive watches are not getting like a yearly cadence so much. I mean, I guess the standard Apple Watch does, but some of the bigger stuff and some of the lower end stuff, I've appreciated that. Especially like with the SE series, because ultimately, consider this, the SE, like at the high end, okay, it should be a watch that lasts you a while with the Ultra series. With the SE, it should be something that shouldn't have a yearly cadence. Why? Because the people who are buying an SE generally, have lower spending power. And so they're not going to buy something new every single year, right? Right. So, the watch didn't really do anything for me overall. I did like that now you can use the speaker on it to actually like play audio. That was cool. But when I had my Ultra 2, I mean, the thing that ultimately made it to where, like, no, I don't want this. Even though at the time I was all in on Apple's ecosystem, more or less, I really didn't want the fact that, like, what you sell that thing as is the cellular connectivity. And I noticed they didn't talk about this at all during this keynote, during this event. And I wonder if it's because they know how bad it is. And I've also kind of wondered if part of the reason, I know there's many reasons, there's more than one, but part of the reason that Apple is so hot on making their own like modems, as in their own 5G chips, okay, is because they want to be able to improve not just the security aspects for the iPhone, but really they want to be able to improve what happens in the watch, because they're really hot and hard about the watch. When you read interviews with Tim Cook, like Tim Cook will come right out and say, in the rare interviews that he does, he'll come right out and say that, yeah, we have a problem with people looking at their phones too much. It's like, well, I don't know, Tim, maybe you should just stop selling the fuckers. Just a thought. But anyway, that isn't going to happen. So I think a big part of it is, like, the cellular connectivity was so bad with my Ultra 2, and it wasn't because where I was. Like, no matter where I was, I couldn't count on downloading podcasts, couldn't count on listening to music successfully. Also, I was really disappointed in the lack of messaging options that existed. As in, you couldn't do messaging with Signal, you couldn't do it with Telegram at the time, and you're basically left with iMessage. And email options were kind of slim too, because like I've always said, I don't have a problem with a smartwatch. I just want it to actually replace the smartphone, because I don't need it to do that much. But, Apple's not going to like leave out or they're not going to destroy an entire category that they very much dominate in, depending upon the time of year. It's always fluctuating between them and Samsung as far as, who's doing the best selling phones. Anyway, so the watch series, I didn't think there was anything that really exciting in that. There's an overall point, a theme that I felt throughout this whole thing, and that theme was really about accessibility. I mean, it literally, the video opened up, or the keynote or the event opened up showing a woman who's missing an arm. And look, I'm not against accessibility options. And to some degree, it's about time Apple really jumped on this, because companies like Microsoft and others have been way ahead of the curve and have put in countless billions of dollars into accessibility features. And certainly, you want to take it, and I'm speaking as not me, but as them, from a vulgar capitalist sense, you don't want to miss out on a potential demographic, right? But I worry that, frankly, well, I have a larger overarching concern around that. I'm fully supportive of this stuff. And like when we talk about the AirPods, like the AirPods 4, that's pretty wild. Like the watch doesn't excite me, AirPods kind of hooked me. And I want to talk about that for a second. But my concern is that, well, no, let's talk about the AirPods first, then I'll talk about the concern, okay? And if I forget, you hit me in the YouTube comments or in the Spotify comments and say, hey, whoa, what was your concern? You didn't address it. You tell me, okay? All right. So the AirPods. The watch didn't, like I said, the watch didn't excite me at all. I'm actually wearing, stop here for a second. Actually wearing, there we go. Just a very basic Mi Band from Xiaomi. These things run anywhere between $35 to $60, and they do exactly what I want. If I wanted some kind of tracking features, they do okay. Health tracking features, they do okay on that. I don't even think that Apple's technology is that precise. Not to say they're not getting better, but I don't think it's as precise. And I could even get into the sleep apnea thing. Like the sleep apnea tracking, which they made a big deal out of. Pixel phones can do this too. Pixel phones actually have a feature where you just put the phone there and it will listen for like coughing and snoring, and it can analyze basically your trend of that and show you if you potentially have sleep apnea. So this is nothing new, okay? As far as what Apple's showing off. And understand, Google introduced that in like the Pixel 6 series, which I'm actually recording this on now. And that came out in what, 2021? So, way to catch up. Anyway, the AirPods 4. Let's get into that. The AirPods 4, I thought, like, again, the watch didn't excite me. There wasn't anything there that really did anything for me. And the idea of even wearing one as a sleep tracker, like, drives me nuts, because I always kind of have my hand on my head. And the idea that, like a Bluetooth device would just be zapping my brain all night long. Even though, again, health concerns around Bluetooth, jury's still out on that, right? Still, I don't like it. But AirPods 4. Now, this is where, for about 15 minutes, and this thing went for maybe about an hour and 20, the whole event. The AirPods 4 almost got me. Like for a second there, I was feeling the classic Steve Jobs Apple reality distortion field. Because, let me tell you, AirPods are fucking awesome. They are amazing. There's no doubt about that. I've always said the best things about the Apple ecosystem is advanced data protection, which encrypts most of your iCloud. All the data, everything you write, pictures you take, all of it. Okay, that's awesome. But then, Apple Wallet, of course, is phenomenal with Apple Pay, right? And especially if you also have the Apple credit card, okay, which I do, which is very nice. Like those kind of like encrypted transactions and shit. I mean, great. And then AirPods. Like those three things, to me, are what make Apple so compelling, and still do. And so the AirPods 4, to talk about that. I'm actually, let's see. Yeah, feeling good here. Let me bring this out some. Okay, so the AirPods 4. None of this was a surprise. Like some of this was announced early or not announced early, but leaked early that this was coming. There's going to be two models of AirPods. And really the only difference is one, as I understand it, has like active noise cancellation and maybe a couple other features, but like AirPods alone aren't enough. You really need AirPods paired with with an iPhone, because like the way that iOS can actually, there's like features you can go into where you can adjust to the way that you hear individually, not just the way that these things go in your ears, but actually how you hear it. Will there like highs be more or whatever, and it adjusts all audio that comes out of the iPhone and into your AirPods from that. It's incredible. That's really, really awesome tech. So this is part of the reason why I say, like, yeah, in fact, Apple made the comment that the AirPods Pro 2nd gen, I believe, or maybe they're counting both versions, I don't think it really matters, are the best-selling headphones in history. I don't doubt it for a second. Like not for a second, because they are amazing. But they're really only amazing when they're paired with iOS, when all those features come into play. So I thought that, a lot of the sound tricks and the transparency mode, which originally was introduced last year with the AirPod Pros, bringing all that in, really, really cool, and part of the thing is, though, as much as these features, there's a lot of features here that I think make sense, and we'll talk about some of the new software features for the AirPods Pros, in fact, or in particular, okay? As much as these features are about accessibility, they're also really relevant to if you live in a city. And I think that a lot of times, us country folk, people who live out in the sticks, are just like, well, I would never use that feature. And, fortunately, I can kind of think with two minds, right? And I'm not making fun of country. I love living in the country. I refuse to live in a city again. But that's the thing. I grew up in New York City, so I get it. Okay. In fact, because of that. So anyway, all right. So the one point, a lot of this stuff is made for people who live in cities. Let's be clear on that. The other point is that one thing that I liked that Apple did was all they did talking about the AirPods 4 is they didn't call them mid-range. They didn't call them budget or anything like that. They just called them open ear. And that's all they are. And I get so tired of journalists, tech journalists, calling, like previously say the AirPods 3, the non-pro version, calling them budget options or mid-tier. And it's like, no. They're not mid-tier. They have all the technology in the world and can do more or less what the pros can do, or what the AirPod Pro can do. Okay. The feature is that they're open ear. And this is where something like transparency particularly comes in, or the ability for it to for the sound coming in to go quiet when the AirPods recognize you're talking to somebody else. I grew up in a city, and here's I just can't imagine how people are comfortable with, in the first place, no matter where they are, I can't imagine why people are comfortable with shoving rubber into their ears so deep, okay? But growing up in a city, oh man, if I wasn't hearing everything around me, that's just a recipe for, getting a baseball bat to the head. Like, no way would I want to walk around without that. You can see here, like, look, I'm I'm wearing earpods, not AirPods, but Apple earpods right now, USB-C models. Very nice, good rich sound that comes out of them, by the way. But they're connected to a Pixel phone right now. And even when, I haven't been in Apple's ecosystem, I always used earpods because they had the best fit and they're open ear. Apple knows that there is a market for open ear, not a market for mid-tier AirPods, a market for open ear. If they cared about mid-tier, would they be offering AirPods Max at $549? Give me a break. And so I really get sick of journalists like who call AirPods, the non-pro versions, who call them mid-tier or budget options. That's horseshit. Anyway, so the AirPods 4, and of course now they have like the Find My speaker built in, all these nice little features. And I mean, really, like they're very, very nice. I like the smaller case. Everything about them is really cool. So that's a winner, ultimately, on on Apple's part. Now, of course, the AirPods Max came out with USB-C and new colorways. Okay, fine, whatever. But the AirPods Pro, the AirPods Pro 2, that's where things got also very, very interesting. In that now they have a clinical grade hearing aid feature where they can basically be used as hearing aids. They can also be used to, and this is really cool, they could be used to where if you're like at a concert, or I think they showed gals performing music and it's really loud, it can actually like just tone out, with the active noise cancellation and whatever else, it can actually tone out what's around you if it's really loud. And these are great features, for either restoring your hearing or protecting your hearing. Who would argue against this? But my concern is this is just another situation where, like, you make money by creating the problem and then selling the cure. And so what I mean by that is, like they're talking about how, so many people are undiagnosed with hearing problems and everything. And hey, people have had hearing problems since the beginning of time. Okay, but I would put some pretty good money on it that part of the reason that so many people have hearing problems right now and why even more people are going to need hearing aids in the future are because they're jamming their fucking ears with AirPods nonstop, wearing them all day, blasting shit all day. Now I know iOS has a feature where it can warn you about unsafe volume levels and all this stuff, but most people, including myself, completely ignore that, especially when I'm in the truck. So again, so much of this feels like a company that maybe not created, but significantly contributed to the problem and is trying to sell you the cure without striking the root. And that's an issue. And that's kind of my point. Like, I mean, again, the hearing aid thing, that's beautiful, and they showed a great video and moments and all this stuff, very tear-jerking, blah, blah, blah. But like this concentration on accessibility, which I applaud, don't confuse me, I applaud it. But at the same time, a lot of these problems, I think, can actually be considered to be caused by, the problems of civilization and problems of a lot of modern technology. And I don't like the lack of admission on that. Because the solution to every problem is not more technology. Not every time. There's times where that may be true. But there are also times where the solution is, okay, no, get technology out of the way. And, let the human live. Let the human be undisturbed. And let the human heal itself. But I don't think that's a world we're heading to, unfortunately. So anyway, AirPods 4, overall, phenomenal. But then we get to the iPhone 16. And the iPhone 16, Pro model or not, Pro Max, whatever, yeah, they're making them bigger, woohoo. What a surprise. These, as much as for like I said, about 15 minutes, I was thinking to myself, yeah, I want to, I'm going to break out my iPhone again because those AirPods 4, the AirPod 4s are awesome, and I want to take advantage of those technologies. But then they do the iPhone 16 and I get completely disabused of that desire. Because what was abundantly clear with that, really any of the new features, the camera button and all that stuff, this is all about trying to justify, and I think that's the most important word. It's all about trying to justify the existence of the Vision Pro and trying to justify like this 4K, 3D content and whatever else. Everything about the iPhone 16 was that. And yes, they did talk about Apple Intelligence, coming out in beta, in October. I mean, again, that beta nomenclature is Apple's quiet admission that this stuff is not ready and they don't even necessarily know all the proper use cases for it, even though when they announced it, I thought they did a better job than just about any of the other tech giants as far as what to do with generative AI in particular. That'll be coming in October. Only works on the iPhone 15 and 16. They spent a lot of time going over some of those features, going over the private compute servers, all of which are great. Really, that's great tech. But again, the iPhone 16 itself, like the justification for it isn't even necessarily generative AI. The justification for it is ultimately the Vision Pro and, the concept of metaverse, augmented reality, and so on. And that's just a road I'm not going down. Are other companies doing that too? Is Google going there? Samsung going there? Yeah, as far as we know, they're working on, goggles and glasses, or, headsets and glasses together that have to do, with this. But at least so far, a lot of the feature set is not about that. It's more about improving what, you can experience right now. And so to me, that wasn't, that's not as bad. Also, when we're talking about Android, I mean, just there's a lot more extensibility and some other features that always keep bringing me back to it, where I have more control, say. Anyway, that's not to say Android is perfect. It's not. But, yeah, the iPhone 16 to me was just completely unimpressive. I wanted more. I wanted to be wowed by it. But there was nothing that really did that. So, if you're wondering about the overarching theme that I wanted to say, about accessibility, okay. And when we're talking about accessibility, we're talking about varying handicaps and everything, all of which are absolutely real and legitimate, and depending upon how, one feels about it. But just that there is much causing problems as they are creating cures. And, well, I already talked all about that, but just to make sure that I didn't forget to mention it. So, yeah, I really wasn't impressed by any of this. And I'm actually even worried about a couple things. One is this really hard push on the Vision Pro, which I think is an automatic failed category. I know other people think that like augmented reality, like glasses of some kind that are just the glasses, are going to be the way of the future. But I don't know when those are going to be legit, because the battery technology, frankly, just is not there. And actually, when you consider a lot of also when you consider, the geopolitical climate, most battery technology, most batteries are all, designed, produced, developed in China. So you have that to worry about as well. But even putting that aside, okay, it's a funny thing. I've always said, when you're younger, there's always the question of, if you're a sci-fi fan or a Star Trek fan in particular, it's like, oh, what Star Trek technology do you wish we had? And everybody's like, oh, I want a phaser, I want the tricorder, I want this. I'm like, I want whatever the hell the battery technology that is in the communicator pins on their chest. That's what I want, because that battery's got to be fucking insane. So that was always my answer to that. But you basically need a battery like that, to power like smart glasses that are in any way efficacious. And I don't see that happening anytime soon, like at all. So it's another situation similar to much of the, like the narrow AI space, or potentially going into the AGI space, where it's like, okay, yeah, it'll happen in 5 years, it'll happen in 5 years, it'll happen in 5 years, but we've been hearing this for 30 years, and these things that they keep telling us will happen in 5 years never fucking happen. Sometimes even longer than 30 years. So I don't buy it. I'll believe you when you actually, put it in my hand, or put it on the shelves at retail stores, right? So I feel like they are really pushing hard and charging a lot of money for a space that there is no guarantee will exist. And is not only is there no guarantee, it's to even say highly speculative, I think isn't even a strong enough term for, the metaverse, augmented reality, virtual reality. So the iPhone 16 didn't do it for me. Now, going forward this year for Apple, of course, we expect probably new iPads, new Macs. Like there's going to be a new Mac Mini, which certainly sounds incredibly, is such a great little device. And I'm definitely intrigued to see what they do with that. But just previewing ahead of that, I have a concern with the Mac line. And as great a computers as they are, arguably the greatest computers on the planet. Like, I wouldn't argue too much against that if somebody said that to me. My concern is, so we know, because here's the thing, when people talk about like new Macs, what are they always saying? Or new iPads even. A lot of your diehards are like, oh man, the iPad is so powerful. It has an M4 chip in it, or whatever M chip it has at the time. And they're like, why can't they just put Mac OS on this thing? I would love it. A little 10-inch device, a little keyboard, folds up, and touchscreen and everything. Why can't that have Mac OS running on it? Well, like I mentioned earlier, Apple will never kill a market category that it tried to that it had a hand in or did create. Okay, so if you make an iPad into a Mac, or put Mac OS on it, you kill the point of basically of MacBooks for many people. And so you stop selling MacBooks, as to where if you just keep the iPad something separate, you sell 2 devices instead of 1, right? Okay. Basic math. Apple knows how to do it. But there was a time, and I talked about this on Sovryn-time, this would have been back like 2013, 2014, and at the time 128 gigabytes was a ton of storage. Now that's like base level, right? But that was a ton of storage back in the day. And when they came out with I think it was the iPad 2 that had 128 gig of storage on it, maybe it was the 3. I said then, I was like, look, Apple is planning on replacing the MacBook with the iPad. They want that to be their device of the future. And we actually know that's true. They did plan on that. But plans changed. Now, why would they want that? Like, why go away from the greatest laptops ever built and, switch to a form factor, which is a very convenient form factor, admittedly, especially with the Magic Keyboard and Apple Pencil and all that. It's very nice. Why go with iPad? Well, the reason isn't the form factor. The reason is the 30% charge in the App Store that Apple gets to collect. It's the Apple tax. And that's really, another reason really that the iPad will probably never get Mac OS, is because everything you want to do on the iPad comes with a 30% profit to Apple. Now, Apple's tried to do this on Mac OS as well, I think with varying success though. And I could get into this conversation a lot more, because there fact, I've talked about this in recent real-time Sovereigns, where, I talked about how there were features where, like, they were going to allow you to turn off app signing. And this is something they announced back in 2021, but they never did. And so, to make a long story short, to wrap this up, my concern is that we're actually going in the opposite direction. Not that the iPad is going to replace the MacBook, but that actually the MacBook eventually is going to become the iPad. And it's going to, the settings and all that stuff already feels very iOS, iPadOS. And I'm worried that the MacBook over time will just get more and more locked down, because Apple has to know that it's not making its real money on devices anymore. Because you can only sell so much. Even though MacBook sales are going up, they've got to know that the real money gets made in app sales and services. And so they'll do everything they can to push people in that direction. Just like when, Logic Pro, came to the iPad. It was a subscription fee. You couldn't buy it outright, even though you can do that on Mac OS. And I think that's just going to end up falling away. And it's pretty sad that there's this real push to basically turn the MacBook into, I think, into a more limited system, because it's so powerful. What a crime. That's just a direction that I see, just a theory. I'm not the only one to hold it. And I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, because I'm worried a lot of computing is going that direction. And we're all going to have to end up using Linux or something. And not that I'm opposed to that. I use Linux all the time. But I like people to have options. Big options. So, overall, the Apple event didn't really do anything for me. The AirPods 4, awesome. Great. But a lot of those little features that it has, I don't need, and I can get, even active noise cancellation in little earbuds that are open ear. I can get those from other companies. JBL, Nothing, like the company called Nothing. Those options exist elsewhere. So anyway, overall, I wasn't impressed. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, other than the AirPods 4, I can't see any reason to upgrade. And if you're in AirPods 2 land, or AirPods Pro 2, you definitely don't need the 4s. Yeah, just not feeling it. So, but again, if you're in that ecosystem and you know why, and there's plenty of great reasons to be there, yes, it's, it's awesome, but I also don't see any reason to upgrade to anything that they talked about this year, other than the AirPods 4, like I said. So, okay, that's it. I'm rambling now. I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'll see all of you on the other side.